Hey everybody, welcome to Wednesday. Ta-da! New bookshelf. I know people freak out. Some people freak out a little bit when I change my background, so I'm pointing it out, giving you a chance to get used to it. I needed to get crap off the floor. I needed more places for books, and obviously more places for other things. It was originally going to be just books. And then it's like, no, I'll put some more collectibles. I'll put books where people don't have to look at them. This is more interesting. But yeah, so the brown shelf got like pushed over, but two whole new bookshelves. Very, very exciting. These are the things that get me excited these days. Bookshelf, IKEA. That's not what I'm talking about today. What I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to talk about two games. One that's in early access, one's that's just been announced. Yay, we're talking about games. If you like this sort of content, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. I apologize if my thoughts drift some. I've got like full-blown seasonal affective disorder brain, and so I'm like, squirrel. But I will do my best. I want to talk about Baldurs Gate 3 that's in early access and why I think it shouldn't be a game in early access. I have thoughts. But also the announced Mass Effect Legendary Edition, the original trilogy remaster, with targeted enhancements for PS5 and Xbox Series, whatever the F they're calling it. And then the fact that Mass Effect 5 is in early development. I'm not going to get excited about Mass Effect 5. Mostly because we got to get through Dragon Age 4 before we get to Mass Effect 5. Now, my suspicion about why they're putting out a Mass Effect Legendary Edition is to get some money coming in to the Bioware division of EA so they can take more time on Dragon Age. That's what I'm hoping, because the next game has to hit. The next Dragon Age game. There is no more screwing around possible with BioWare right now. Andromeda, I understand, sold okay, but was obviously a disappointment for people like me who played it and I couldn't finish it. It was just so depressing. It was like, okay, you look kind of like Mass Effect, a terrifying funhouse mirror version of Mass Effect with your weird character animations, but that's not Mass Effect. The world building just wasn't there. Politically correct Krogans, what? I stopped when a Krogan kept like lecturing me about water pollution. I was like, this is not Mass Effect. And I have no problem with anomalies in a culture. I have no problem with a culture evolving. But Krogans are fun because they say hello by headbutting. Unless something is played for laughs that somebody is a politically correct Krogan, no, it's bad. Now, one of the things I have held out hope for with the Legendary Edition is to show they actually can make people who are not "my face is tired." They can make people that don't look terrifying. I think that will do a lot, not only to show people that we will not get a repeat of Andromeda in that regard, but also maybe giving them time to figure out the wonkiness that is the Frostbite engine and maybe not have that happen again, maybe get their heads around more how to, because that was the purpose of the Gears of War re-releases before the Coalition did like Gears 4 and 5, right, is to teach a new crop of people how to make a Gears of War game by remastering, like rebuilding the old ones. It's not a bad idea because there's been a lot of turnover at BioWare, which makes me, on the one hand, they're giving Dragon Age 4 more time, but Dragon Age doesn't have the benefit of that reset. and their head writer left. Personally, I think Gator checked out midway through Inquisition and was just like, I'm just going to get this game done and then I'm going to go, because the spark that was in the rest of his work just wasn't there. I think they just burned him out. But, I mean, okay. Inquisition was not Andromeda. Inquisition was, we copied too much from Skyrim. But Inquisition still did not have those great, fun, well-rounded characters that the previous Dragon Age games did. The dilution of characters. It's like, Bioware got knocked off their game with the Dragon Age franchise when EA forced them to rush Dragon Age 2. And so in many ways, the roughness is not their fault. I am hoping that this extra time gives them a chance to plant their feet again and make an experience that isn't so bleh. Because, I mean, let's face it, Witcher 3 changed the game in terms of fantasy RPGs. And I'm not talking about the story. I'm talking about the smoothness with the way that game plays. Yes, you're not managing party systems in The Witcher. Yes, it is different in that regard. And I like companions. I like the party system. I don't want every RPG developer out there to try to make The Witcher. I think that's part of what's wrong with fantasy RPGs right now. You just can't copy the model that CD Projekt Red uses on anything, because they have so much goodwill with their fan base, and it's just the raw purchasing dollar of how far they can stretch a buck making games in Poland and getting money from the Polish government, and just the lower cost of living there. You can't do that in a North American studio. I don't think you can even do that in a lot of Japanese studios anymore. I do think that Western RPG makers should look more to JRPG makers to see how they allocate limited resources, because those old school Baldurs Gate games are still, hello Zelda, are still better in terms of storytelling in many ways than the modern Bioware RPGs. Now, that being said, I do think that Dragon Age 2 had some of the best characters and the best individual storylines in the Dragon Age franchise. I mean, the Arishok was a badass freaking villain. Not a John Arenicus type villain, but he had menace, man. And that was cool. And I think that was sort of a high watermark in terms of Dragon Age bad guys that have never quite, once they did that whole thing with the Elder Gods and the Taint and everything like that, the stories have just felt smaller. And I'm hoping they'll start, I think, based on the end of Inquisition, they're going to start doing more stuff with the elves, with the Dalish now, which could be great. Could be a disaster because they lost the guy who created that whole thing. We'll see. So that's enough about Mass Effect. Let's move on to, to close, I am not going to get excited about Mass Effect 5 because it's very unlikely that Mass Effect 5 will come out before Dragon Age 4. And if Dragon Age 4 isn't great, I'm not sure there will be a Mass Effect 5. BioWare, to paraphrase Chris Rock, BioWare needs a hit like a crack addict needs another hit. Okay, like, they need a hit. They need a solid new game. Period. End of story. I don't know why they don't start doing what Ubisoft does and put out little games alongside their big games to just give their developers a chance to just remember how to tell stories again without worrying about, the sweat bead and the raindrops on a character's head. Like, I don't think that's as important as people make it out to be. Moving on to Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 is in early access right now. I do not believe that Baldur's Gate 3 belongs in early access. RPGs should not be in early access because dissonance kills RPGs. And right now, unless Larian takes the player feedback from what's going on with Baldur's Gate 3 in early access and translate that into completely redoing the beginning of the game, people are just not going to stay with it long enough for the story to kind of unfold. It's a mess. Like, I can't emphasize enough what a mess this game is. Unfortunately, it's, on the one hand, it plays basically like Divinity with a Baldur's Gate coat of paint. It doesn't have that. What the Baldur's Gate games did well is they made the story about a particular protagonist and their unique background. And that embeds you in the story while you're being introduced to the utterly sprawling Forgotten Realms campaign setting. There's a lot to learn and a lot to remember about that campaign setting, all the deities and all the different races. And it's a great setting, but you need it spoon-fed to you. And even me, with tons of, there's, see the bottom shelf? Half that bottom shelf is D&D Forgotten Realms books, okay? And I played all the Baldur's Gate games, and I played Icewind Dale, and I played Neverwinter Nights, and I played those PS2 action, the Snowblind Studios games. I love the Baldur's Gate universe. Like, I love Faerun. I love, and I love with Baldur's Gate how they like shoehorn Spelljammer in wherever they can. That's cool too. But this game is a mess. And even with the experience I have in this world, it's coming at me too fast and it's a blur. And it's too fast and it's too slow at the same time. And maybe they just needed money because, again, they're a small studio. I wish there was another funding model for maybe people to prepay for the game. Just, hey, help us get to the finish line. Please pre-order directly from us. You know, yes, it hurts your sales at launch that get posted, but still help the game cross the finish line. I would even be better with them doing an additional crowdfund or something like that to get the game across the finish line, because early access works really well for games like RimWorld or even something like Hades, where it's very gameplay forward. And I mean, RimWorld has been really cool to see how the game has evolved with the new stuff and how, you know, the maker of the game really toyed with the balance and things like that. But a story-driven game doesn't belong in early access, because anything that's getting between you and the story is a bad thing. And everything about the Baldur's Gate 3 experience gets in between you and the story. They have this dice roll mechanic that at first I thought was neat, because it was more kind of like the tabletop experience, but it gets old fast. And there are so many roll of the dice, and they're D20 rolls, right? You feel like the whole experience is just left to chance as opposed to being a role-playing experience. It's an interesting idea, but it slows down the pace of play too much. Waiting for that, you know, artificial dice to roll it. You know, it doesn't take the computer that long. That's just round and round it goes. And just to find out you failed another persuasion check, or you know, you lose track of what you're supposed to be doing from a role-playing perspective. it takes longer to roll those virtual die than it does to roll an actual D20. Like, it is slow. I guess it's supposed to be amping up the anticipation, but my God, it's too much. But the camera's a mess. The Once I switched over to DirectX 11, the game became much more stable. On Vulkan, it crashed twice in the character creator. You can watch my Twitch for that. If it's super unstable in Vulkan. I had to switch over. Fortunately, it worked okay. But the characters just aren't compelling. So far, I put about 25 hours in. I've done nothing because at 25 hours has been a lot of replaying old stuff because I feel like I did something wrong. I get the sense that the intent of the game is that you're just supposed to let it play and failure's part of the experience. There's, when a door closes, a window opens kind of thing. But it's so hard to see what I'm doing. And the controls are so clumsy and it's so glitchy that I constantly feel like I've done something wrong. And I'm so unclear about what my objectives in individual little sub missions are supposed to be, that I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back and try that again because that was really unsatisfying. Maybe I did something wrong. Turns out, no, any outcome is really unsatisfying. There's no sense of completion when you complete a side mission. The missions are so sprawled out early on that, okay, you're adding to the map, but you don't know where you're going. You don't know who your companions are. You don't really know what this world is. It's disorienting in a bad way, even though it's disorienting in a deliberate way. And then there's the critical dissonance of, we have to stop, we have to hurry and get these things out of our heads before we change into monsters. But that's not how you're actually supposed to play the game. I actually played it the way the game was telling me to play it, and so I booted it to the Githyanki scouting crew and had to backtrack and reload an old save because, surprise, the game doesn't scale the enemies. They're hard level building. So you have to grind for quite a while before you're powerful enough to fight those guys, even with some little assistance things I discovered how to do. I'm 25 hours in. I still haven't got the damn tadpole out of my head or gotten a larger sense of what I'm supposed to be doing at the game. That's a problem. And it's not that it's taking a while. It's that I'm redoing the same things over and over and over again because instead of that glide path that the past Baldurs Gate games did and the Icewind and Neverwinter Nights and even the first Dragon Age, instead of that glide path, Dragon Age scaled, but it's these sudden shocks of difficulty, and you get the slightest thing wrong and 20 goblins will attack you or an entire village will attack you and you have no warning, you have no idea why. It's just, oh, you made the wrong choice, now everybody's mad at you, and you had no ability to predict that was the way it was going to go. So I don't know why they did it this way other than finances. If it's finances, okay, I kind of understand, but at this point, I know I'm not the only one who feels this way, and they'd have to massively and quickly clean up the beginning to get people back proselytizing for this game, because the real issue with it is that, and don't freak out at this word, I don't know how else to say it. You're starting 3 companions, they're bland. There's no diversity to them. And by diversity, I don't mean that identity politics kind of diversity, although that would be nice too. It's a party, even with the Githyanki, of smarmy white people. Smarmy, secretive, sneering white people. And there's no swooping is bad. There's no Liliana being kind of cracked, right? There's no... With Gale, the wizard, they tried to make him kind of debonair, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work. The whole pace of play needs to pick up. They have to worry less about, these rendered cutscenes when you cut to a person you can see for 5 minutes before a fucking tree gets in the way, and have more of a meaningful experience where you either get to know your traveling companions, get to understand their likes and dislikes before you constantly see approve, disapprove in the corner. I don't know. I can't talk to them. Some of it makes sense. Some of it's like, I don't know you well enough to know why you like this or not. And okay, sure, maybe that's life, but games aren't life. Games should feel fair to an extent. And I don't even know what the approval does right now. Like, I don't know if they just threw that in there because, hey, Baldur's Gate's been all that way. But they're all just unpleasant characters. I think the game is leaning very heavily into, they want you to play as an evil character sometimes. But even though I think the more I learn about Gale, the more I think he's actually a good character. He's a follower of Mistra. What does that mean? If you don't know, you're going to have a hard time with this game because that sort of stuff. But yeah, they're just, and there's no rogue available for the first 20 some odd hours of the game. Now, I don't know if maybe they eliminated the rogue class. That would be weird. But, the whole thing's just, it's not ready. It isn't early access. This plays like an alpha build in some ways. And it's so disappointing because, like, what do I do now? Do I stop and wait for it to get better? Or do I keep pushing through to see if it eventually gets better so I can tell people, one thing I will tell you, don't rush, ignore people. You're not going to turn into a mind flayer anytime soon. I'm starting to get the sense that's deliberate in terms of the background of the game, but don't do what I did and listen to the game, which you should not have to warn people about. You should not break the immersion of the experience by having to ignore all your party members yelling at you about hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. I hate that. That's a massive pet peeve in the game. Between that and the overly complex controls, why do they need that jump feature? Why can't they just be incorporated, calculate into the movement? Why do you have that? Like, I don't want to have to go into turn-based gameplay mode just to jump over a fucking felled bridge. The game is in the way of the game, if that makes any sense. And it's super, super frustrating. So I will keep at it for a while. I will report back if it gets better. If you don't hear from me about this game again, it didn't get better. So yay, we got to talk about games. If you like this sort of thing, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.